Rika, I hope so. I really do. That Keiichi got a good grade this time around. Seemingly, we have entered the next loop of Higurashi when they cry. And one thing I really do like about this show is rather than going the traditional time travel, time loop formula, where you reset very okay, we know we're about to reset, and while you can argue we know it's going to happen at this point, whenever mass murder occurs and we start the next episode, we're pretty sure we're going to see everyone alive and well back in the day. It's still nice to have a character, rather than remembering exactly what's happening, have more of a deja vu approach where things are familiar, and he's probably starting to wonder why things are familiar, but it's not blatant oh, this has happened before in a similar but clearly now different way because of different actions, and most likely Rika doing some sort of kind of putting pieces in different places hoping for the best result, even if I don't know if the Rika we see all bubbly and cheerful is actually a normal girl, or if she has a split personality, or is hiding her personality. It's very hard to say, but it's really fun to watch episodes like these, especially considering now that we've seen a decent amount of Higurashi getting deeper in the arc count. So it's very fun to see situations we've already seen before and how characters are interacting differently based on the dialogue that's happening. And all things considered, this was probably one of the smoothest starts to an arc that our boy has seen to date. There's a lot of good things happening. I mean, when the parents go away, you're kind of expecting the absolute worst, at least I know I was. But this man, the worst thing you can say, he almost burned his house down. That's a little bad, but in Higurashi's case, that's honestly like Christmas morning. If only your house was about to burst into flames, you should probably consider yourself lucky, and consider yourself lucky that two little girls came in and saved the day. It's very interesting though, because there's certain moments throughout this episode that were almost identical to ones that we've seen earlier in the show, but the difference was the dialogue. And it's starting to seem like the way we trigger arcs, or the way we trigger certain perspectives to go crazy and haywire, is what we say and do. And while you can say, well, of course, but there's this moment towards the end of the episode where we're walking with Mion as well as Reina and of course Keiichi. And if we remember back when we first started this anime out, we had moments similar where we're explaining the situation. To me, that's really interesting because we're seeing similar events play out, just even slightly different, but those slightly different approaches really do change everything. And you can really see the difference in such a really basic premise when you say, oh, there's going to be a festival, someone's going to be taken away or possessed, but we just keep repeating the same little time loop. But so many different things are happening differently, and it's all based on what our boy is saying or doing that really does shape the foundation of the arc at hand. And this arc is seemingly based around the brother to Sadako, who, honestly, when you start the episode off, I was like, I don't know who this character is, and then as the episode gets going, I was thinking to myself, oh, that's probably the brother who ran away, because they're talking about a brother who ran away, but then they started talking about the curse, and I was like, okay, what's happening here? Maybe the curse didn't actually affect him, and then the end of the episode, she calls him uncle, and I'm like, oh, either that actually is her brother and she's misremembering how great he was, or that's actually an uncle who is a complete and utter piece of shit, and I don't know where they're going with that, but it doesn't look good, and you know some crazy shit's gonna happen. I have a feeling that she's gonna stab so-called uncle to death, and who knows what Keiichi's gonna say or do if he does discover that. I really did like this episode a whole lot, and just how honestly peaceful it was, but usually with Higurashi, the more peaceful something is, the more brutal it gets, and it does feel like with each arc, things are getting progressively worse and worse. And it's still uncertain exactly what triggers a reset, because, I would want to say Rika, it seemingly is the one doing it, but if she actually got killed last arc, I don't know how she would be able to trigger anything. So there's still a lot of mysteries at play, but I mean, one of the things that I really appreciate, that he's both the most important and least important person all at the same time. He's really important because it does feel like his actions determine which arc of insanity we get thrown into, but it also doesn't feel like he's a hero who will change everything. There's a lot of pieces at play that determine a good or bad end. So it's really fun to follow a character such as that and see how Higurashi is really taking this non-linear path, and even watching the show week by week, you can go back and think about previous episodes and see them in different lights. And of course, when you binge it, you're going to see it in completely new lights as well, because you're going to be able to really piece together, see clues a lot sooner rather than later. And that's why it's such an incredible project for both new and old fans of Higurashi alike. Back when we first got introduced to the police officer, I called him Stranger Danger, and Chris Hansen needed to have a seat with him. He just gave me a creepy vibe, and it was mostly due to his character design, but it was really how he was interacting with our boy Keiichi. Just really gave me the heebie-jeebies. I was like, this guy is just doing some weird things. You can say, oh, the time period's a lot different. you know, they had a way different way of interacting with kids. It's still creepy nonetheless, but I started to change my perspective on him. I was like, you know what? After everything we've been seeing, he might be one of the few people we can trust who actually is just trying to solve crimes, and it's hoping our boy isn't the one behind them. We get introduced to a character who I think tops the creepiness tenfold. This dude is supposedly a coach who's like, oh, you know, I want to marry this little child someday, and you can argue it's just a joke, but I'm like, man, what are you saying? And then he starts talking about how he wants to adopt her, and I'm like, you can't come off of saying you want to marry a child to then want to adopt her, to then call me Papa, and then say, hey, make sure she's okay. I'm expecting this dude to be an absolute lunatic. If he's not, because Higurashi's the type of show that if characters are seemingly normal, they're usually pretty insane. So if a character's seemingly creepy, I hope he's actually really, really creepy, because I don't know how you brush aside some of these comments, and I'm just like, holy shit, my boy. You need to call up Chris Hansen. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some people who are big fan of this character and say I'm being too harsh. I disagree. This dude gave me some very creepy vibes, and I'm not gonna say I'm excited to see his character, but I mean, if they do something very creepy with his character in terms of an actual intriguing Higurashi plot, I'll be all for that, but hopefully the cop will not become who I thought he would be at the beginning of the show and remain to be an ally, even if he does have some weird tendencies to be a little creepy when he approaches our boy Keiichi. But I found this episode to be very intriguing, especially considering just how normal it was, and I love that about this show because I wasn't exactly sure who was gonna snap, because the logical side to me was saying, well, if we're seemingly focusing on an arc that is focused on Sadako, well then clearly that's who's gonna lose her marbles and is going to be a psychopath. But then you get moments where you get those brief glimpses of Reina looking like a psycho, and I'm like, oh, so clearly it's not 100%, oh, if this is for an anime watcher, or watching a new arc, that has to be the character who's going to lose her marbles. It may not necessarily be that. If Keiichi starts doing things similar to the previous arcs, that could trigger that to happen, and that's such an intriguing concept, where it does feel like you're playing a video game as you're walking through it, but you're not sure what your choices are going to do, but you know at any point you could trigger a flag, set a new arc in motion as you're already in one. And who knows if we could have arcs intertwine, like we make Reina insane and we make Sadako insane and they intertwine and they both are insane at the same time. It feels like that's a very likely possibility, but seriously, Higurashi is on a roll. I really think this show is brilliant. I understand why so many people loved it back from the day and were really excited for this new project, but I mean, as I always say, as someone new to Higurashi's universe, this is incredible, and I love seeing the mysteries unfold and how, honestly, every time I read my comment sections, which honestly, after getting some of the bad apples out of here, it's been a really fun comment section to see how, like, people who know of Higurashi, everything about Higurashi, are just as intrigued